Hey, what's up guys? It's your boy Yankee with No Brim, and today on this very spectacular Christmas special that's coming out 357 days early, we're gonna see if we can beat Elden Ring as the God of War. This is actually extremely thematically appropriate because Kratos is in fact known for killing gods, and this game is also about killing gods, so we have to make sure we take out every single one of them, plus there might be some special bonus bosses later, wink wink. But before we can play as that super swagged out version, we gotta play as the discount Walmart Kratos for a little while. First thing we need to do is get a worthy weapon that would fit the God of War, and of course he has used many weapons in the past, like swords attached to chains, to claws attached to chains, to like electric claws attached to... What can I say? My man likes chains. We're just going to be sticking with the Norse Saga weapons for this one, and we already start out with an axe and some drippy armor, but of course his most iconic weapons are the Blades of Chaos, which I have decided to use the Magma Blades to represent for now, but we will get something with at least 16 times as much swag later on. And of course, the only way to get some Magma Blades is to travel all the way to Volcano Manor on the other side of this godforsaken earth, and to get there we need to either simply collect 2 medallions or face a mid-ish level boss without leveling up at all. Now I think normally old man Kratos would have picked the medallions, but unfortunately Atreus forgot to pick up milk this morning and Kratos was forced to eat a very dry bowl of mini wheats and now has to take his anger out on something. I also gathered the ingredients to make some freezing grease to give my axe that frosty effect, and it was still tough. There were many deaths, but this is the man who has canonically crawled his way out of hell no less than 4 times, so he was basically born from perseverance, and determination is a distant second cousin. Then we continue our long trek to Volcano Manor, run through until we find this round gentleman right here, and holy shit, slap my butt cheeks and call me adulthood, because this is not fun. Kratos hasn't found many apples yet, so he still gets one shot by a lot of his attacks, but with a combination of the freezing damage and jump attacks to knock him down, I was able to make this fight a lot easier, but it still took a million attempts to learn it well enough to not get turned into Swiss cheese. Not to mention the worst boss attack on this side of the Mississippi River, the likes of which Kratos has never seen before, and all he could do was just cower behind this pillar and pray to himself that he doesn't decide to just randomly roll through it this time. With that grueling task out of the way, we can finally get our Magma Blades by farming these same 2 enemies for hours, because the Magma Blade only has a 1% drop rate, and I need 2 of them. And it takes forever just to kill one of these guys because I am such a low level still. I love it. And after a long and epic journey, wasting a handful of hours of my one and only precious life, we finally get our loot, and yeah, it looks pretty good. We're gonna get a bunch of other stuff later to make this build better, but for now we can go take on our first god. I honestly expected the blades to do a little more damage, but I guess it's okay because I haven't leveled them up yet and I've barely leveled myself up, and yes, I am getting my ass thoroughly handed to me throughout this fight, thanks for noticing, but Kratos is one very resilient bald man and powers his way through with lots of jump attacks and getting him to chill in the lava a few times until he finally takes his forever nap. With him out of the way, I can also get the Highlander axe now since it looks a lot closer to Kratos' actual axe, and then we're going to add the Chilling Mist Ash of War with the Cold Affinity to give all my enemies a cold and make them much less effective in combat since they'll all be busy wiping their noses and stuff all the time. To get those items, that does mean I need to trek through another manor, defeat the Ghost Horse of Christmas Past, which wasn't too terrible. I just played very aggressively and kept attacking non-stop until he was no longer living, ran back here, hit the thing until it gives me the thing, and then put it on my axe, and now it looks like this. Ooh, aha. With that in hand, we can face our second god, and I absolutely wrecked this man's shit, because it turns out the Chilling Mist Ash of War is amazing, because not only does it make your weapon look super sick nasty and apply frost damage, it also makes enemies slower than molasses, so you can potentially get a couple extra cheeky hits in. Also, I should join the NBA, because look at the hops my man has. We might as well take on Rihanna now, and on the way I grabbed this Spirit Summon Archer guys because I guess I needed an Atreus, or Atreus is. He has twins now, and they're both named Atreus for some reason, I don't know. Take out Garm real quick by giving him the old double-handed yank and spank, and then take out this poor, unsuspecting fella that probably didn't expect to face the motherfucking God of War this morning, and then we finally can face Rihanna herself. And I was actually really scared to do this fight because I get super nervous around girls, but I knew I had to be very brave about it for you guys. And it turns out the Chilling Mist Ash of War is also great for her, and just the axe swings alone are enough to stagger her and stop her from casting any spells. Sadly, even the God of War is afraid of the Bloodhound Knight, and he spent a good minute and a half running away from him, but once he was gone, he bravely made his way back and finished her off for what she did to Eminem. Except I didn't, because I died to a stupid wolf when she had a micron of health left, and I only plan to return for my revenge once they finally add the sex update. Now we could head to the good old capital, and if I had a nickel for every horse I fought in this run so far, I would have 2 whole nickels, which I would then use to purchase your mother for the night. This horse with a guy on top was much more difficult than the other guy with a horse on top. Wait, what? That's not what I meant to say. I actually messed that up. This horse with a guy on top was much more difficult than the other guy with a horse on. Why do I keep saying that? This horse with a guy on top was much more difficult than the other horse with a guy on top, and I wanted to use my blades, but he's resistant to fire, so that's kind of lame, but he is definitely not resistant to an axe in the face, so I went with that instead. We quickly made our way to the Godfrey Piss Ghost, and Kratos immediately went absolutely apeshit at the sight of his name, and he honestly didn't stand a chance. We did this eloquent dance of trading blows and twirling around each other, our lips almost touching multiple times, and there was a lot of tension, but he forgot to say no homo, so I had to kill him. And since you were wondering, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but the thing about the JFK assassination is that it wasn't an assassination at all. His head actually just randomly exploded that day, and everyone got all bent out of shape about it, but you didn't hear it from me. Also, if you haven't played Ragnarok yet, you might not know that Kratos does in fact get a third weapon, being the Draupnir spear, and after looking over the list of spears in Elden Ring for a total of 13 seconds, I decided that the basic spear, just called spear, is the one that most closely resembles his actual spear. And take a shot for every time I said spear in that last sentence if you want this video to be a vaguely incoherent blur more than it already is. And of course in Ragnarok, you do have the ability to throw infinite spears that also explode, and while I can't make them explode in this game, I can get an Ash of War that lets me throw almost infinite spooky ghost spears instead, so that's pretty close. And apparently this man made it out of the gulag because we have to face him again. But who cares about that, because look at this sick ass no-scope I got. No, get the camera! Sadly for me, I got my cheeks clapped quite a few times in this fight, and I'm just gonna blame it on the fact that I was like only level 50 or something, and most people recommend you be about level 70 to 80 for this, and it was absolutely not because I am dog shit at this game. Before the fire giant, I decided that it was absolutely necessary that I spend 15 minutes going through this dungeon and taking out this fine gentleman, also I could steal his drip and replace my wrist armor for something a little more fitting. Now that we're looking like a million runes, I can face the fire giant, and he also handed my ass to me on a silver platter for a very long time. I probably should have just used the spear for this one, but it's just not as iconic as the blades or the axe, and as Gandhi said, it's a nerf or nothing, and this man is literally made out of fire, so I just stuck with the ice axe for this one. It was still pretty tough because he's also resistant to frost, but Kratos has faced many titans in the past much larger than this puny little guy. I mean, look at the size of this dude's fingernail. The fire giant is a firefly compared to him, but that's not important. What's important is now we can deny this man his afterlife and trade his soul for a whip. And did you notice? Right there, in the bottom right hand corner. Yeah, right there. Gotcha, idiot. But also, why yes, this is the real Blade of Chaos, and yes, I do suddenly have a weird lazy eye, and yes, it does look like my soul was sucked out by the Ghostbusters or something. And obviously, Kratos needs 2 Blades of Chaos, and the only way to get the other one is by doing these assassination missions real quick, so I can murk this fool, and yes, I did drop my axe in a puddle of glow-in-the-dark wristband liquid that I was definitely not spilling while I was trying to see what it tastes like. Anyways, we equipped his whip, and surprise surprise, plucked my butt hair and called me Aunt Sally because this is another Blade of Chaos. Too bad this one has bleed automatically applied that I could not figure out how to take off, so I hired my friend Big Cheddar from the CIA, Cheddar Intelligence Association, to hack my Elden Ring account and give me a second Giant's Braid instead. Now we can make our way back to the Forge to commit a cardinal sin, and I don't really know what this has to do with birds, but at least we can take our frustrations out on the McForeskin twins. I really wanted to use those brand new shiny blades I just got, but unfortunately the twins are resistant to fire, but they are weak to frost, so you gotta do what you gotta do. And normally I would focus on the skinny boy, but I had so much practice with the round boy from earlier that I would rather just fight him the whole time, to the point that I literally did not lay a single finger on the skinny one, like I was Keanu Reeves and he was a questionably aged female fan asking for a picture. This whole thing was still torture. I absolutely hate this fight, it gives me nightmares, but with the power of OxyClean, I was able to vanquish my foes after a measly 30 attempts. This and a blunt, am I right, fellas? With those guys out of the way, we can try out our brand new Blades of Chaos, and these were actually pretty damn difficult to use at first, not gonna lie. They do somewhat make up for it with their superior range, but the only problem is that they're kind of slow, especially if you use them at the same time, but of course I'm gonna keep using them like that to look cool because I have the words fashion over function tatted on my left butt cheek, so that's the way I live. First phase has always been pretty easy for me, especially when I was doing other challenges, but those mostly involved ranged attacks, but this time I have to fight him close up, and that made it much more difficult and made me realize that I am way more ass at this game than I even originally thought. The second phase made me want to fuck myself. Mostly because this nincompoop never stops jumping and twirling around like a goddamn goofy goober for long enough for me to actually get some damage in. And when he does finally get close, I had to make sure that I got even closer because he can just whip out his old flippity dippity attack out of nowhere and basically kill me with one shot, so staying really close and trying to get either behind him or to the side for a nice Christian side hug was definitely the way to go. At the very least, Gideon was still an absolute chump because it turns out he has a very difficult time casting his silly little spells while he has a hot piece of metal piercing his skull. Now we finally get the pleasure of facing somebody whose body is worthy of competing with the God of War, but sadly he reminds me of my father, so I have to beat the absolute piss out of this man.
Looks can be deceiving.
Because he was actually pretty wimpy. It was still a beautiful duel though, at least for me, because I mean look at me, I am making him look like an absolute fool, an absolute goof, just a real silly guy if you must. I mean he can't even hit me except for all those times that he hit me a bunch. And it may or may not be because all the flesh he has exposed for no reason, but he is very susceptible to third-degree burns from my blades, and I am sure his mother told him to bring a jacket today to work because it's chilly outside, and he didn't listen because for some reason, actually wanting to be warm in the winter is super cringe, especially when you're a kid. In the second phase, I really wanted to fight him in hand-to-hand combat to even the playing field, but fist damage in this game does not scale or get any better, and Kratos doesn't wear any gauntlets in the Norse games, so I just stuck with the blades and try not to get distracted by his massive pecs. Before taking on Ramadan, we have some unfinished business to attend to, being the optional bosses and tax fraud, and it looks like the FBI is already investigating me, so Radon is up next. And unfortunately for him, he's weak to fire, and I'm way too overleveled for this, so boob bop blam, thank you Sam, pop a few Benadryl and take on this weird fella that has an unhealthy obsession for blood. This man actually has a resistance to fire, so it's time to bust out the axe again, and I actually kinda missed it, not gonna lie. He actually ended up being a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be, mostly because he has these two attacks that for the life of me I could not get myself to not react to immediately when you're supposed to wait a second before you dodge, and I don't know if it was because of the 13 Benadryl I took before this or something else, but the world may never know. At least I do a lot of damage to him and can stun him pretty easily if I keep it up, and that is the recipe for getting absolutely rocked in this game, and for our efforts we get a whopping 420,000 souls, and that's the weed number. I'm addicted and don't know how to stop. Time for this slithery boy, who was surprisingly much easier than I expected because I thought I would be forced to end up using that spear in the room, and I really didn't want to, so it's a good thing that he's weak to frost because I just kept getting in kissing distance from him and trying to give him as much frostbite as possible and absolutely wrecking him. The second phase is basically more of the same, except now his hitboxes are a lot more fucky and he moves around a lot more, and I do have to stop a couple times to avoid these skulls, but once we're done with that, we get right back to work and give him enough hypothermia to take his forever nap. Now that everyone else is taken care of, I have to face her. But before we face She Who Shall Not Be Named, I have to face her guard. And if I had a nickel for every horse I fought in this run, I would only have one nickel because as you remember, I spent the other two on your mother. But she was actually running a buy one get one half off deal that day, so I got her again. Ha 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 ha. Still despise this fight though, but at least with the blades, they're actually pretty great because the distance you can hit her from is actually really far. It's so far sometimes that she won't even react. Plus, she's pretty weak to frost and fire, so I can use both of my weapons for this fight, which I absolutely did. So I would just try to keep my distance to avoid getting scarlet cooties and would just keep jumping in, get a hit, run away, and would also abuse the absolute hell out of my Ash of War, and I was almost able to get through the entire first phase without taking a hit sometimes. In the second phase, I decided to hit her with the good old fire and ice condom technique, which worked out pretty great. I also spent most of it just running away, waiting for a couple of different attacks to swing on her, or even better yet, use the Ash of War again because they were just putting in absolute work in this fight. Most of the difficulty still comes from the fodder wall dance, and I'm not perfect at avoiding it, but usually I can get away with only getting hit once or twice, and then you have to get in the perfect position to get close enough to hit her with your blades, but far enough away that you don't get cooties or stabbed, and honestly, I just don't know which one will be worse. And then rinse and repeat that for a few more agonizing hours, and congrats, you just beat the hardest boss in the game with weapons that are actually pretty good and barely even a challenge. Proud of you, champ. And with nothing left to do now, we can finally face the final boss, Radagon and the Elden Beast. Now you may have noticed something a little bit different about Radagon. and my axe, and my entire outfit really. And that's because I took my copy of Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok, stuck them together with some silly putty, and microwaved them for about 68 plus 1 seconds, and it just came out like this. I don't know, I can't explain it. I'm not a scientist, don't ask me. Anyways, this fight was awesome, and my axe is awesome, and my favorite move you can do with it is when you throw your axe and recall it really quick by holding R2, and you can even extend the combo by holding R2 again for a slightly different animation, and it's just chef's kiss. The only complaints I have that are sometimes when you do throw the axe, it'll kind of just phase through him and do nothing, but I'll chalk that one up to GMOs. My biggest complaint though is that I, and I am sure you, are being blinded by the lightning and frost effects, and there was even a handful of times that he was behind a bunch of lightning and I just could not see him at all. And I don't know if it was intentionally like this or my microwave messed the game up, but it definitely made it way more intense trying to anticipate when he would dash at me and try to give me a taste of his hammer. And still, 10 out of 10, would melt my games together again. And that's not all, folks, because for the Elden Beast, I'm busting out the genuine, hood-certified Droppiner Spear with all the bells and whistles to go along with it. And this was the only boss that I used this spear on because it is just too good, and I can't imagine anything better because it's already a super fast and powerful close-range weapon, but you could also basically turn it into a Glock and hit him from an insane distance, and honestly, the poor Elden Beast, he just never stood a chance. And that's still not all, folks. I don't know exactly why I'm covered in shit, but before I take my rightful place as the Elden God, there's still one more man I need to take care of, and that's this old geezer right here using this bad boy. And also, I just accidentally deleted 5 minutes worth of voiceover and didn't save it, so I'm just gonna let this fight play out because it's awesome, but also, I'm gonna force you to look at my channel member names and listen to me name the top members at the same time. Motherfucking Groveran, Chris Sura, Juno, Mr. Swigadoo, and the big dicked Buck. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. I'm probably going to do this same kind of video with young Kratos with his unique weapons and bosses, so if you want to see that, maybe subscribe if you think I deserve it, and I genuinely hope you have a great rest of your day and a very happy New Year's. Peace.